Welcome to That's Gotta Hurt Live, wherever you're watching. I hope you're making tonight your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. Whether you play fantasy sports, whether you gamble on the games, or you're just a diehard sports fan, I help you understand pro and college injuries so that you win your fantasy league, win your bet on tonight's game, or just enjoy the games that much more. Very excited to be with you for the first real episode of That's Gotta Hurt Live. If you were with me last night, I told you a little bit about myself and why I'm such a big sports fan, what my background is in sports medicine, which makes me good at understanding a lot of these injuries. Again, I'm double board certified as an orthopedic surgeon. I've spent a lot of time with pro and college sports and athletes. I've done thousands of these surgeries. So we're going to talk a little bit about what these injuries are, potentially what the likelihood is that they'll play tonight or in the next game, and then we'll talk a little bit about more long-term. Tonight we've got really good injuries. I know I said I was going to do maybe 3 or 4, but I got 5 for you tonight that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about Jimmy Butler's injury last night for the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat guard was injured against the Golden State Warriors. We're going to talk about his ankle sprain, what it might be, when he might be back. We're going to talk about the exciting return of Klay Thompson for the Golden State Warriors, coming off of 2 major injuries. We're going to talk about Baker Mayfield undergoing surgery later this week for his shoulder dislocation, ending his season. We'll talk about Derrick Henry of my Tennessee Titans and when he might be back. It might be very soon, which is really exciting for the current number 1 seed in the AFC. And we're going to talk a little sadder story, but hopefully it turns out well. Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Michael Gallup and what this means, his ACL tear means for potential free agency. If you have comments, leave those in the comments below, and I'll try to share those and answer those. If you have thoughts on these injuries, if it's about another player we're not talking about here, maybe you can put, in addition to putting your name and where you're from, put the name of the player and the injury, and we'll try to talk a little bit about that. Again, nothing I mentioned tonight is medical advice for you if you have that particular injury, but I'm also not involved in these players' injuries, so I'm not reporting information. I am obviously analyzing it and giving you my insight on it that way. All right, first, let's talk about the injury that occurred last night. If you were watching any of the NBA, this was all over the highlights. Jimmy Butler, the star guard / forward for the Miami Heat, who's had a history of injuries with his ankle, a couple issues this season, even with his right ankle. Well, last night he went to drive and he sort of slipped on the floor, so his foot went outward. And most ankle sprains, here I'll show you, most ankle sprains, this is my trusty model of an ankle, are this way, meaning the outside of your ankle sort of goes down towards the floor or the ground or whatever it is. His did the exact opposite, where his foot went out, stretching the ligaments of the medial side of the ankle. And I know just a little while ago, Ira Winderman of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel said that the Heat expect him back by the end of the week, or hope to have him back. I will tell you, I watched the video of that injury. I watched them carry him off the court, and he couldn't put any weight on it at all. I think this is more serious than the team is letting on. I hope it's not. I suspect, though, that it is. Medial ankle sprains on the inside, again, the inside of the ankle, not the outside, tend to take longer. Plus, very often, they also involve what's called the syndesmosis, the ligaments of the, let me get my hand out of the way here, of the between the end of the tibia and fibula above the ankle. And so those, if there's a high ankle sprain component, can take up to 6 weeks. So that, I would tell you, could be a little more worrisome. Again, end of this week, if you're betting on this or playing fantasy basketball, I might not count on him playing maybe till Sunday. Hopefully it's and it could be weeks longer. I hope not, but it certainly could be. But I would bet Klay Thompson is going to appear before Jimmy Butler. Just my prediction there. Klay Thompson, as you know, has been out now for 2.5 years from his ACL injury in the playoffs in 2019. Then November 2020, if you remember, he tore his Achilles on the other side and missed another full season. Now it's been 2.5 seasons. It looks like he's finally going to be back. I don't know if you saw that video of him the other day where he was at the pregame shoot-around and he made 24 straight three-pointers, which had all the fans going crazy. Golden State, currently the number 1 seed in the Western Conference in the NBA, and look great. Could be a formidable force if he comes back healthy. Now, what's interesting to me about this is if you look at his 2 injuries, the ACL on one side, the Achilles on the other side, and I'm trying to remember which side was which. Here, hang on, let me look at that. I want to say it was left ACL and right Achilles, but I want to tell you that for sure. If you look at that combination of injuries, ACL and Achilles injury. Yeah, right Achilles tear, left ACL tear, and the ACL was first. There was a study done, 6-7 years ago now, of NBA injuries, and it was 8 of the most common injuries of the lower body and what effect it had on career length, chances of getting back to play, but also your performance down the road. It was, scoring and rebounding and all that, and all sorts of these advanced metrics. And 2 of the worst injuries in terms of return to same level of play or better in the NBA were ACL injury and Achilles injury. And those were separate, not one player having both. That alone put a lot of concern in me that we would never see the Klay Thompson of old. Now, reports are that he looks fantastic, and I hope that's true. Now, it may be better for him as mostly a spot shooter. He should be able to do that just as well as before. What will be interesting is his ability to drive the lane, his ability to push off. The ACL, and I don't have my knee model, but the ACL is involved in rotational stability, basically stabilizing the knee as you land and turn on it and preventing the knee from giving out like that. Now, the graft, all that's healed. That was a long time ago. That should be fine, but that can have long-term consequences for the knee, can lead to long-term changes to the cartilage and arthritis. Now, hopefully that hasn't set in yet. Usually that's 10, 12 years or more down the road. Still a concern. And then the Achilles, there's very often a loss of strength, push-off strength, and just overall jumping ability, power, that kind of thing down the road. For the average person, Achilles tear or an ACL tear, maybe not such a big deal, but we're talking about being able to compete at an NBA level, some of the best athletes in the world. And so it may not be as big of a deal for Klay Thompson because, again, mostly just a catch and shoot guy, a very, very, very good one for sure. But it may not affect him as it might, say, if this had been Jimmy Butler suffering that same injury, or a player on my team, the Memphis Grizzlies. If that was Ja Morant, I would seriously worry that I'd never see a player as good as the Ja Morant now if he were to suffer those 2 injuries over the course of 2.5 years. So excited he's back. I to be fair, is one of the few Warriors players I really like. My brother went to Davidson, so he's a big Steph Curry fan, and that's fine. Steph's done amazing things for the league, amazing player, and all the 8 to 12-year-old kids line up outside the arenas, inside the arenas, getting autographs. They just love Steph Curry. It's great. I think the Warriors being great is great for basketball, but I'm really excited to see Klay Thompson back and see over the coming weeks if he looks like the player that we saw before. All right, let's talk a little bit about football. The last 3 we're going to talk about today are in the NFL. Just announced earlier today, even though there was hints of this yesterday, after the Cleveland Browns were eliminated for the playoffs, losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, it was speculated that Baker Mayfield would soon undergo off-season surgery for his left shoulder instability, his left shoulder dislocations. Announced today he's going to get it this week, so he's not going to play in the final game, which isn't a big deal because it doesn't mean anything. Basically what he did, this is a right shoulder, it's his non-throwing shoulder, but basically the ball popped out of the socket early this season. Now, in a non-throwing shoulder, they did a reasonable thing. You obviously put it back into place, and then you see how that does over the coming days and weeks. Lots of physical therapy, getting the swelling down, getting the strength back, things like that, and seeing if you can be able to do your job on the field. And I feel like that's a reasonable thing to do for a first-time dislocation, especially of the non-throwing shoulder. If that was the throwing shoulder, that probably wouldn't work so well. The challenge with shoulder dislocations, they have a very, very high recurrence rate, meaning when that ball slides out of the socket, especially if you're 25 and under, 21 and under especially, it's very, very likely to keep happening again. And Baker's did happen again by all reports. They tried putting him in a brace that sort of limited his motion on that side, but that affected his performance, and it didn't sound like it stabilized his shoulder. And the concern when you have, and this is with everybody, not just a football player, but that ball sliding out of the socket on repeated occasions, you can do more damage to the shoulder. You can damage the labrum, the cartilage bumper around the socket. You can damage the cartilage. So you don't want to let that pop out for very long. You want to go ahead and get it done. And so the question would be, should they mid-season have done this surgery, take him out for the rest of the season, but then you limit any further damage and you get him healed quicker? Can't go back and change that now, but some fans would probably say, hey, we didn't make the playoffs anyway. We might have been better off just going ahead and doing it. Now, here's why I think it's a good idea not to let him play in that game. The time clock for when you get back to play, and just length of time after surgery is one minimal factor of when you get back to play. It's more based on getting your motion back and your strength back and your ability to do everything with that arm. But that length of time, and that's typically with a shoulder dislocation. If it's throwing shoulder, you're talking 6 to 9 months. If it's the non-throwing shoulder, you're probably talking 4 to 6. Starts the day of surgery, essentially. And so the sooner you do it, the sooner he gets back. And they're hoping he's back for OTAs. The good thing is non-throwing shoulder shouldn't be any long-term problems, but still one that the timing is a little curious, at least. I expect him, I don't know if he'll be there at OTAs, quite honestly. We'll see. But I do expect day one of training camp him to look like the Baker Mayfield of old. All right, Tennessee Titans. I got to talk about this real quickly because Derrick Henry, the Titans, yes, we're the 1 seed right now. All we have to do is beat and I say we as if I'm on the team, but as a Titans fan, they just have to beat the Houston Texans, who we've lost to earlier this year, but have to beat the Houston Texans, and we're the number 1 seed, which is important because we get the single bye in the AFC, get a week off to really rest. And the Titans have been just hobbled with injuries this year. I read somewhere we've had more players out over the course of the season than any other team. Anyway, we lost Derrick Henry about 8 weeks ago to a Jones fracture. That is that, if you can see, again, this is the foot, inside, outside. These are the metatarsals, the long bones. This is the one under the little toe, the fifth toe. That's the fifth metatarsal. And a Jones fracture, instead of breaking it here, where most sort of lay people break it, a Jones fracture means you break it a little higher up in an area that has 2 problems. 1, very poor blood supply, and 2, there's tension forces across that bone, meaning it's prone to not heal. So in athletes, we almost always fix it, usually by putting a screw down the center of the bone and holding it together. And that surgery does very well. It has high rates of healing. Yes, there have been NFL players that have needed a second surgery. That's what Zion Williamson's going through with the New Orleans Pelicans, and his isn't doing well. And so that's the concern you look at with a guy like Derrick Henry. If you rush somebody back too fast, and I don't know if that's what happened with Zion, but something's not going right. It may be his 320 pounds, allegedly. But still, the concern is that you've got to get that completely healed, even after surgery. If you rush somebody back too soon, it doesn't heal, and then you're talking about doing a bone grafting procedure or another surgery, any kind of thing to try to get it to heal, and you risk somebody's long-term health. But there is talk, and I think I did the math, by week 1 of the playoffs, that's somewhere 8, 9, 10 weeks out from surgery. Now, if they get the number 1, and to be fair, it was just announced earlier late this afternoon by Tron Davenport of ESPN that the Titans designated him to return to practice, meaning he can be added back to the roster anytime in the next 21 days. The bye week gives him basically 2 weeks. I completely expect he will not play Sunday. It's just not worth the risk. If you can buy him 2 more weeks, still win the game against the Texans, and they've got Dante Foreman that has done a great job as a fill-in running back, had 132 yards last Sunday. If he can do that, and they get away with it and win, then they buy him 2 more weeks of recovery. And I expect that that's what they will try to do. I expect he probably could play now, and anybody that's followed Derrick Henry, that guy is a freak of nature physically, squatting just ridiculous amounts of weights, the way he just pushes players away. But you can't, biology is biology. It only heals so fast, and you've got to make sure it's healed. And then there's getting the cardio and the strength back. I think I read Klay Thompson tweeted that he's heard from inside the Titans organization that he looks really good. So we'll see. It's possible he plays. I would put that chance fairly low, certainly less than 50-50, because if they just need that bye week gives them an extra week to heal. I just think that that's likely what he's going to do. And then, yes, Robert, Derrick Henry is amazing. I wasn't a big fan of him at Alabama, but that's more because I'm not much of an Alabama fan in college football. But man, do I think he is incredible. If you get bored, you want to go down a rabbit hole sometime, go onto YouTube or these other sites and look for Derrick Henry squat videos or weightlifting videos. It is crazy what he can do. All right, and last is a little sad. I want to talk real quickly about Cowboys receiver Michael Gallup tore his ACL and will be out for the season. Don't really have that much to say about ACL tears. We talked a little bit about it with Klay. We're going to talk about ACLs tons on this show going forward. Here's why this sort of bums me out a little bit. So he was heading into free agency, meaning his contract with the Cowboys expires at the end of the year. He can sign with other teams, and he's a great wide receiver. So he was probably going to make a lot of money, whether it was from the Cowboys. Probably not, because they've got a lot of salary cap issues with Dak Prescott getting so much money and Ezekiel Elliott getting so much money, and they got so many other players they need to play or to pay. But maybe it was the Cowboys, but somebody was going to pay him a lot of money because top wide receivers are really, really valuable in the NFL. The problem is, by tearing it now, essentially right around January 1st, is typically with ACLs. Yes, you can get back in 6 months. I know that's what we for decades told people, and it can happen even sooner. In the NFL, we're typically talking more about 9 months, 9 to 12, to where you really feel normal. And so teams looking at signing him may have some second thoughts about a guy that might not be able to play in a game or even in practice at full speed and everything until September. And so somebody will sign him. The guy's got too much talent. But this probably, and I don't say this to be the bad guy, I just say this may cost him millions of dollars. Somebody told me, I think I saw Allen Robinson I think it was when he was with the Bears. I may have the name wrong. It was Allen Robinson that tore ACL in the last year of his rookie contract in Jacksonville. He signed a $42 million deal in Chicago, but a lot of people said that he would have made a lot more money had it not been for the ACL. So I hope that doesn't happen to Michael Gallup, but the timing is bad, obviously, going into free agency, but more importantly, the timing at the end of the season. The chance that he's ready by like midsummer, I think he'll be doing a lot, but is he at 100% able to do everything he needs to be able to do? I hope so, but I will tell you, I expect that NFL teams will have some concerns. All right, very, very excited. If you have any players you want to talk about real quickly, I'm happy to take a few questions. Otherwise, I will end it for tonight. I've already got some ideas for people I want to talk about tomorrow. If you have ideas, you can send those, either leave them as comments or go to my website, drdavidgeier.com. There's a contact button. You can send me a message that way. Anybody you want to talk about, please let me know. Really, really appreciative that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.